Today I'm going to go over some of the pros and cons of the DBX 286S versus this hybrid unit I've made with the Behringer UltraGain Pro and the MDX 2600. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel, folks. This is Shane. As you can see, I have two Rode Procasters on the desk. This particular one right here is going into the DBX, and this particular one is going into the Behringer setup. Now, back in the day, Behringer had sort of like mixed reviews. A lot of people said, oh, you know, their stuff's not that reliable or whatever. I'm totally digging this unit. There are some pros and cons of both, including the DBX as well. This isn't a paid video or anything like that. I went out and I spent my own money on this stuff. So if this video is helpful, please give it a thumbs up. I appreciate that. In just a moment, we'll switch over from my shirt mic to these two Rode Procasters on the desk, and I've got them set up with expander mode, so I can talk into one of these and it won't actually be picked up from the other one, so it'll be nice and simple, but let's get into it. So to kick things off, let's just do a quick audio comparison between the DBX 286S, which you're listening to right now, and the Behringer. So one of the things I love about this particular unit being the 286S is the fact you plug it in and you get a really nice sound. It's nice and clean. The two-band EQ works extremely well. The compressor's great as well. It's not something that I personally use. One of the advantages, though, of the DBX over the Behringer is the gate is a little bit better. If you actually physically need a noise gate, the DBX just does that a little bit better. In terms of the expander mode, I actually prefer the Behringer, but we'll get to that in just a moment. A couple of the criticisms, though, I have of the DBX is there's no power button on the front. There's no power button on the back. Like, what were they thinking when they decided to do that? I think that's just a huge flaw. It means you either have to keep plugging and unplugging the cable on the floor, or if you've got a switch, you can turn it on and off on the switchboard, but I don't have one of those, so I have to remember to always unplug the unit. It sucks. The Behringer doesn't have that problem. It's got really nice power buttons on the front, and it just works better in that particular fashion. But in terms of overall sound quality, I'm going to give the edge slightly, just very slightly, to this DBX. Let's have a listen to the Behringer. What you're listening to right now is the Rode Procaster going through the Behringer UltraGain Pro and then through the Composer, the MDX 2600. So in terms of just overall sound quality, this has a lot more presence. You could absolutely dial up the top end on the other one, but it doesn't have the low end boom. The two-band EQ on the DBX is fantastic. It really gives you a nice, warm broadcast quality sound. This gives you a great sound as well, but it is that little bit different. I like the functionality of this particular setup with the Behringers over the DBX, and they have power buttons on the front. That might not be a deal breaker for everybody. Most people just go for sound quality, but if I was to either recommend getting two DBXs or just getting the UltraGain Pro and the Composer and using those together and getting two of everything that you get basically with the Composer, I would say go for the Behringer route. Now, just to give you a bit of heads up on how I landed at this decision, I bought the Behringer UltraGain Pro. I then bought the DBX, and I thought, yeah, this is pretty cool. I wonder if Behringer make anything like that, and they do. They make a few of those Composer units, and when I went to buy one, the guy said, yeah, these are pretty much a rip-off, or very similar, he said, to the DBX 286S. So I thought, I'll give it a shot. I just love the functionality of it for just doing a two-person podcast. You get everything you need in those two racks. You can noise gate it completely as well. But like I said, the noise gate on the Behringer isn't as good as the one on the DBX 286S. They just get that right. But if you're using expander mode, which is what I'm using right now, where you can sort of bring down the gain under a certain level, it's awesome. I much prefer this expander. I think it's a whole lot more functional and easier to sort of dial it in the way that you want. What I'm going to do now is do a quick comparison and some tweaks to the DBX 286S to show you the difference in sound. And then we'll do the same also with the Behringer. So immediately I can hear this just has so much more low end. That's just something you can easily tweak as well. So I'm going to bring the microphone around here and I'm going to actually turn off the enhancer altogether. This is now with the low and the high completely off. So it does sound a whole lot more flat, but I love the fact you can absolutely just turn this up and you can get way more lows and you can get way more highs. Setting them both to about 3 is the sweet spot in my opinion, or at least it is for my voice with this particular microphone. If you're using other mics, you might want to set it up differently. I'm not even using the compression. I love the way this sounds just straight as it is. With the expander as well, you want to be careful if you're using also compression, because compression will bring up the quiet parts, which may actually sort of nullify the expander to some extent, or gate, depending on how you're using it. So if you've got someone else in the room, you've got two
noise gate setup, you have to be really conscious of how much compression you're using. Otherwise, the gate will continually open and close and it gets very distracting. So if you want to know more about gates and expanders, I'll leave a link up in the cards and you can check out the video I did about that. And now back to the Behringer Ultra Gain Pro. So there's a huge difference, especially on the top end and also on the low end. So let's go back over to the actual Behringer unit here. Now, I've actually got the low cut enabled. So what I'm going to do is actually disable this altogether. So I'm going to turn that off. And we're also going to turn the low contour off as well. Now, there's two other buttons we can get. So I can hear it's actually added a little bit more low end. There's one called Tube and Enhancer. Now, if I turn the Enhancer off, you're going to hear that it's dropped the top end down considerably. Now, some people might prefer a less bright top end like this, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So if you prefer this sound, use it like that. I just prefer that. A little bit of extra sizzle on the top end. I kind of like it. It sounds pretty nice. And it also has a low function, which is called Tube. So if we turn this off, this is how it's going to sound now. You can hear that it's maybe lost a little bit of, well, it's added more bass, but it's kind of lost a bit of its clarity. So if we hit the enhancer, we get the top end and the low end back, and the Tube just sort of tidies everything up and makes it just that little bit brighter. So if you're thinking about buying one of the Behringer units, my suggestion is, depending on what kind of sound you like and also what microphone you're using, leave those two buttons in. I think they sound pretty cool. Now I'm back to the DBX right now, and I just wanted to go over one of the other sort of downsides of the unit over the Behringer, which is completely surprising. I didn't know this when I bought it, but there's no XLR connectivity on the back. It's all, TRS jack style connection. So just keep that in mind. If you're a fan of using like regular mic cables to connect, say, one unit to the other, it does not have it. You're going to have to use a TRS to XLR cable, which is what I'm using right now to go into my sound card. I don't know why they did that. I just feel like it adds a sort of like a touch of cheapness. On the back of the Behringer units, they've got all the connectivity in the world. They've got the jack connections, they've got the XLR connections. I just prefer the click of the XLR, and if there's any issues with them not being in right, you're not going to get any audio. It's that simple. So I kind of feel like the Behringer has the advantage in terms of connectivity, no questions about it. It may not have that sort of beautiful two-band EQ of the DBX, but overall, if I've got a two-person podcast, I'm always using the Behringer setup because the expanders just work together extremely well. And what can I tell you? It's plug and play. Plug two mics in. I've got everything set up identically on both sides, and it just works. So you've also got to take into account cost. Now, if you're not on a budget, you can spend as much as you like. Maybe buy two of the DBX units. If you're like me and you kind of think, oh, you know what? I want to save a few bucks, but still get great sound quality with a microphone much like this, then go for the Behringers. And just to close this video out, I'm back to the Behringer setup. Now, I got to tell you, I think just value for money and what you get so much more by buying those two Behringer units over just one DBX 286S. Now, sound quality and what you like is different to what everybody else likes. I can hear a difference in my headphones between both of the units, but I've had nobody complain on my podcast on my main channel regarding the setup using the Behringers. It's completely changed the audio. Using the expanders was the best thing I ever learnt about because expanders are so much less irritating than using gates. And if you don't know the difference, like I said, check out the cards. There'll be a video up there as well. But just in terms of functionality, usability, all that kind of stuff, the DBX is easier to get going, but the Behringers offer way more in terms of that two-person setup. If you're on your own and you don't expect anyone else to ever turn up and do a podcast together, or if you're a gamer and you only need one channel, just get the DBX. There'll be a lot less of a learning curve as well. And if you're just like me and you want to have someone over and do a podcast, then go for the Behringers. You'll save a few bucks and you'll have everything you need to get two people going with at least these type of broadcast quality microphones.
Thanks for watching, folks. This is Shane. If this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. I appreciate that. If you're looking or thinking about buying one of these, I'll leave some links to Sweetwater and also to B&H in the description below. They help support the channel at no extra cost to you as well. Yeah, overall, I'm wrapped with my setup. I got to tell you, having both, side by side was a real eye-opener. I love the functionality of the Behringer. I can't believe I'm saying that. I think I prefer the sound quality just over the Behringer with the DBX 286S. That two-band EQ is something special, but you can always add that in on post. If you're like me and you shoot a podcast as well as film it, you can then dump the audio on your computer and just raise the low end up. It's that simple. But if you want to save time and don't do any post-production, maybe the best option might be the DBX, but overall the podcast quality I'm getting is great. What I'll also do is leave a link up in the cards as well, and you can check out my podcast on my main channel as well. And what I've done with that is almost zero post-processing. All I did was boost up the volume of the audio in post. That was it. So no extra EQs, no gates or anything. Everything that you're gonna hear is with the Behringers. Now, I'm not sponsored by either of these companies. As I mentioned, I went out and bought both of them. If I had to do it all over again, would I have bought the DBX? Probably not. I know that's kind of crazy because it does sound that little bit better, but I really feel like this Behringer combination will give you two pretty much identical setups to the DBX instead of just one. And it might cost $100 more, but if you only buy the DBX and you need a second one, it's gonna cost you a lot more. It's gonna cost you over, well, it depends on where you live, but where I live, it's gonna be $280 more for me to get a second DBX unit if I only ever had the one of those. Whereas the Behringer units in total is about $400 for both units, and that's it. So I think that's, at least where I live, is a good deal. Now, you could probably find these on the used market as well, so check out and see if you can find them wherever you can. But if you're gonna go for the Behringer option, I can't recommend them enough. I think it's really transformed the audio quality and made these microphones really shine as well. We can kind of sit back a little bit and just get really great audio without having to be up too close on all of them all of the time as well. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, both are great. If you already own one, let me know what you think of it in the comments below. This video is not meant to offend anybody. If you spent money on one and you wish you had got the other one or something like that, it's just my experience with both. They're both great units, both for different types of applications. One's more for a solo application. The other one's if you want to get someone else in and have the identical setup and save a few bucks. So let me know what you think. Thanks again for watching. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you soon. See ya.